Hi everyone, thanks for joining me. You're watching In Deep on the Delta. This is the weekly Delta report for the week of July 21st, and if you're a largemouth bass guy, it's been a good week, and I think we're going to have a good week coming up. So we're going to focus almost 100% of our report on largemouth bass. But before we get into that, if you want other information anywhere here in the Central Valley or on the coast, make sure, if you're not already watching, to watch Alan Fong's Outdoors. Alan is doing a weekly report, if you don't already know that, and he is talking about everything from trout to bass to salmon to steelhead, whatever is going on. Alan is covering that. And I talked to Alan earlier in the week. Alan has been focusing in on salmon on the American River. That just opened up about, I guess it was Saturday. He's catching fish. A lot of the guys are catching fish, and it seemed to be a slug of fish in there. So it looks like it's going to be a good salmon year for the American River fishery. So check out Alan Fong's Outdoors, and you can get a better report when it comes to things other than the Delta. All right, with that, we're going to get right into the Delta. We're going to skip over the stripers. There are still stripers in the system, and some people are catching them in their bycatch with if they're fishing for largemouth bass. Still some 5 and 6 pound resident fish that they're catching. There's a ton of just shakers out there that are 10 to 12 inches. They're chasing bait all over the Delta. There's a good supply of shad right now, and the shad are nice size. They look like they're about 3 or 4 inches. So that's good for the stripers, and I'm glad to see that, because that's going to tell us the next few years, hopefully, we're going to have more stripers in the system. But for right now, it's all about largemouth bass. Water temperatures, midday 80 to 83, 84 degrees. It may be a degree or two cooler in the mornings, but nice warm water, 80 to 83 or 4 degrees. We have in the backs of some of the sloughs, I've seen 3 and 4 feet of visibility, water visibility. As you get closer to the channel, it gets up to about 6-7 feet of visibility. So everything's looking good as far as water conditions out here. I have been focusing on the sloughs that are off the main channel. During the weekdays, there hasn't been a lot of fishing pressure, but there is an increase in boating pressure, especially on the channel. You've got a lot more cruisers and people recreational skiing or jet boating. So my suggestion, if you're coming out to this week, stay off the main channel. I know the weekends have been quite a bit more activity on here, but that's normal during the summer. If you have a chance to take a day off work, it's really nice to be out here during the weekdays. So we are going to talk about fishing the morning bite, the afternoon bite, or the daylight bite, and then the evening bite, because it changes dramatically. Everybody's catching fish. I've been getting tons of reports, and when I get this many reports, that's telling me that the fishing's good. When the fishing tails off, the reports tend to really taper off along with that. The only thing that I've heard a few people complaining about is that they are having to wade through too many rats in order to get the bigger fish. But that's not altogether a terrible problem to have. So let's get into what happened earlier in the week and what's going to happen next week, because it is changing. And I've seen the last couple days, not a drastic change, but I could see some patterns changing. And I have some information for you that if you're coming out next week, I think you can depend on to catch some fish. So last week we had a full moon. The tides were really crazy good, and the fish turned on. All the fish turned on. If you came out here, nobody's just catching big fish. Some of the people, depending on if you're throwing, worms and drop shot, you probably got a lot of smaller fish in the mix. But it's a mix of fish that everyone was catching, but they were all turned on. 2 weeks ago, the bigger fish weren't turned on, and everybody was just complaining about catching the rats. Now everything is going, and there are a variety of techniques that you can catch fish with. With that being said, I talked to Rob Cloutier from the Bass Hole, and Rob backed me up when he said all of his reports, especially starting last weekend, have been very good here on the Delta. One thing I'm going to have to disagree with Rob is when I asked him for a couple of the top baits, his top baits were a chatterbait and a worm. And I agree with the chatterbait. I don't agree with the worm. Although the biggest fish that I got a picture of was from Dave, and Dave had a 9-pound 14-ounce fish, and that was caught on a worm. So maybe Rob's right, but I'm going to give you my 2 cents anyhow. Okay, so here's the difference from the morning to the afternoon to the evening. Last week the evening bite was better with the full moon. This week the morning bite seems to be a better bite. So if you're coming out for the day, come out early and then fish through the day. If you can fish till night, that's great, but if you have to choose a morning bite or an evening bite, I would choose the morning bite. If you come out in the evening, you're still going to catch fish. One thing you want to be aware of is the mosquitoes have been worse than normal out here this year. I don't know why, but bring some bug spray. I've been throwing one of those nets over my head. The mosquitoes have been a little bit of a problem. But anyhow, fish the morning. You want to throw poppers. You want to throw wake baits. You know, I like to throw the Mikey. And you want to throw big moving baits like this is the River to Sea Bubble Walker. I think it's the 130. I think it's about a 5-inch bait. But super flukes, things like that, they'll all catch you fish. But the poppers, the Ricos, the Booyah Popper, the small bubble walker, the Poppars, those are catching a ton of fish. You'll get a variety of size on that, but they're catching a ton of fish and you'll have a bunch of fun. But this is the deal. That bite is going to start just after light and it's going to go for about 45 minutes. Then it's going to start tapering off. You can continue to fish topwater all day out here, and the topwater bite slows down, but you can catch some big fish. This is the key if you want to fish topwaters or extend that morning topwater bite. You want to get into sloughs away from the channel that are running north and south. Those are the sloughs that have a bank that is the eastern bank on that slough is shaded. I am fishing rock banks and I'm looking for the steepest rock banks I could find. If they have some intermittent tule patches, that's great. And I'm also looking for surface vegetation. It's pretty easy to find. So if you find one of those eastern banks that is shaded, and you only need anywhere from a couple of feet to maybe 4 or 5 feet, that's going to extend your morning topwater bite. What I'm doing is I'm fishing parallel to the bank. If it's open water, I'm throwing a small popper, and those are still getting bit. When I get up to a spot that has some surface vegetation, the frog is the way to go. This is the one that I've been throwing. I think anything with a chartreuse belly is going to work for you. The frog is catching fish all day, and it's getting some big fish. So one of the keys, again, to extend that topwater bite, you're going to want to fish sloughs that run north and south and stay to the eastern bank where there is shade. You also want to look for shade when it comes to surface vegetation under the shade. Now, there should be a really good punch bite on, and I have caught some punch fish this week, but the topwater fishing and the chatterbait fishing have been so good that it's not like when I'm punching, I'm catching all big fish. I'm catching a lot of 1.5 to 2 pound fish punching. I haven't punched a big fish this week. I have caught several fish, 4, 5, 6 pounds on frogs, topwaters, and also this chatterbait. So that's my 2 cents as far as baits you should be throwing. Anyhow, we talked about the morning topwaters, poppers, blah, 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 extending that topwater bite into 9, 10 o'clock. Once the heat of the day starts in, I would definitely stick with your frog. And my 2 baits of the week are going to be a chatterbait and either a frog or a popper. If you have shade, throw that popper in water that's shaded that you can get a popper in. If if you can't get a popper in there, throw a frog in there. So my two baits are the frog and the chatterbait. Here is a tip if it comes to you putting on a chatterbait. And what I will do as soon as that morning bite dies off, I'll keep the frog on and I'll start relying on a chatterbait. A green pumpkin chatterbait has been the ticket. But notice the difference between these two. They're both basically green pumpkin chatterbaits. I want you to look at the tail on this one. That orange has been the one. This is the guy that's been catching the fish. This green pumpkin tail looks great and it usually works real well, but you want something with some orange in it. Here's that green pumpkin trailer. Really nice trailer most of the time, and it works really well. This is the trailer that I've been using. It's a molted kind of craw colored trailer. It's made by Big Bite Baits. Here's another one. I think they call this the Firecracker, but a big tip. We fished them side by side, and this is the one that's getting bit more often. So keep that in mind when you're throwing the chatterbaits. They're producing consistent action. I'm fishing rock banks and I'm fishing them inside. I'm not fishing outside the weed line. I'm fishing those chatterbaits inside, dragging them right through the vegetation. And man, I'll tell you, when they get on these chatterbaits, they are really just slamming them hard. Same thing with the frogs. I've got just some tremendous topwater bites this week, and those two techniques will take you right through the day. You can throw worms. I've thrown some 5 and 6 inch worms, and I'm getting a lot of bites, but I'm not getting big fish. I'm getting small fish. If you're going to throw worms, stick to green pumpkin. I would suggest putting your Cincos away and maybe going to like a Yum Dinger or something that's a little cheaper. The smaller fish really don't care, about who makes that worm. If you're just fishing for bigger fish with the worm, stay with the Cinco, but maybe go to a 7 inch and try to detour some of the smaller fish. So the worms are working, but throughout the day, I would definitely stick to a frog and that chatterbait. I've also caught fish on speed traps and square bills, and those are basically primarily Delta Craw colors. That's all I've been throwing. Everything is catching fish. I went out yesterday, I caught fish punching, frogging, topwater, wake bait, worm, and crankbait. Everything's working. Just fish what's in front of you. Make sure that you're getting down in the vegetation, and make sure you're fishing shade. With that being said, the evening bite is still there. Again, start off with poppers. If you didn't, I put a video out, the change of light bite. You can check that out, and that's how I generally choose my baits. It talks about how I choose my baits and how I fish that change of light bite. If you haven't checked out that video, make sure you check that out. What else can I say? This week, I think it's going to slow down a little bit because the tides are slowing down, but the fishing is still very good. You really got to get out here, because you will have some periods of ups and downs. You may find a couple hours during the day that it gets tough to fish, but man, when these fish turn on, they're ready to feed. If you stay out long enough, you're going to find a bite window out here that's going to really turn you on. The other thing that I'll say is there's several people that sent in reports this week that said they are doing very good at low tide, and I think a lot of those people are the ones that are worming and punching inside the trough and around the submerged vegetation. But don't be afraid of low tide. I'm going to try to do a low tide video, how to fish low tide, here in the next couple weeks. A lot of people don't like fishing that particular period, but you can catch fish at low tide. So that's my 2 cents, guys. Come on out and enjoy it. Send me your reports, and man, I'm telling you, if you stick with it, especially with that frog and that chatterbait, you're just gonna get those fish that really punch it. Just stop it and put a bend in that rod. So you're gonna find some great fishing out here. So thanks for watching. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. I'll see you guys next week.